Hello, and welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be going over quadratic functions. And now if you have tuned into my previous videos, everything we've been doing up to this point should have prepared you hopefully for this lesson. So I'm just going to kind of go over briefly what quadratic functions are and how we could solve some of the common types of problems you'll probably be seeing with quadratic functions in your algebra class. So first of all, let's figure out what's a quadratic function. So a quadratic function is basically when you have the highest power in a polynomial to be a power of 2. So for example, if I have something like x squared plus 3, that is a polynomial. So now if I were to set this equal to 0, then I would have a quadratic function. So a quadratic function is when the polynomial with the highest power of 2 is equal to 0. So when the whole thing is equal to 0, we have a quadratic function. So now we want to figure out what does this look like? So a quadratic function, if we have power of x squared is the highest, and let's say x squared plus x plus 1 is equal as yeah, okay. So let's say this is it, right? Let's say I have this function and I want to figure out what this would look like. What I would essentially do is I would say, okay, this is a quadratic function because the highest power is 2. So now I'm going to graph what a quadratic function could look like. Not this one per se, but a quadratic function is going to be like this, right? It's going to be anything where it has this weird parabola. We call this shape in math a parabola. And you can just remember that it's a parabola by the way it's shaped like that. So now that we know that, I want to figure out how do I solve a quadratic function. So you have to remember that when we're solving quadratic functions, the whole thing has to be set equal to 0, right? So in this example I just gave you right here, this whole thing was set equal to 0. So we need to make sure that whenever we do one of these problems that it's always set equal to 0. So let's start with number one. There's two ways we could really do a quadratic function and figure out how to solve it. So when we're solving a quadratic function, we're trying to solve for the variable. So in this case, for this problem, the variable is going to be n. So I want to figure out now, how do I solve this? So in my last video, I went over how to factor, right? So since you know how to factor now, we could actually break this down perfectly so we could actually find what n is equal to. So when I'm doing this problem, I'm going to zoom in here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that one side of the quadratic function is equal to 0, right? So to get one side equal to 0, I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, right? So now I'm going to get n squared plus 7n plus 10 is equal to 0. Okay, so now if you watch my last video, we have this form right here, right? N squared plus 7n plus 10. And we could actually factor this perfectly, right? Because the sum of AB, right? Because this is A and this is, sorry, the sum of AC, I misspelled that. Okay, this is A and this is C, right? Because we have ax squared plus bx plus c, right? So this is A, this is C. So it'd be the sum, oh, sorry, I messed this up. Okay, the product of AC is 10. And the sum of B, sum has to add up to B, right? So we have to add up to 7. Okay, so what two numbers multiply to 10 and also add up to 7? It would be 5 and 2, right? So you'd have n plus 5 and n plus 2. And we have to, of course, leave this set equal to 0. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each of these individual things right I got right here and set each of those equal to 0, right? So I'm going to make two mini equations for me now. I'm going to have one that, I'm going to have one that says n plus 5 is equal to 0, and another one that says n plus 2 is equal to 0. So from there, I'm just going to subtract my 5 on both sides, right? So I don't have space there. We know the answer would have to be n is equal to -5. And then for this one, it would be n is equal to -2. We have this and we have this. And those are the answers to this quadratic function. So all I did here was I set one side equal to 0 of this equation right here. Then I factored it using my lessons from my last video I just made you. And then I found these two factors, right? N plus 5 and n plus 2. And then I set each of those equal to 0. And then I found what n could equal. So the answers is both n is equal to -5 and n is equal to -2. So now I'm going to go over the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is one of my favorite things in math. It is very, very amazing. So don't freak out when you see this formula because it's a very big formula, but there are a lot of videos on YouTube that you can use to help you memorize it. They'll sing it to you in a song and it'll be stuck in your head for the rest of your life. So the formula is x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now there's gonna be a song. I'll put it in the link at the bottom because I'm not good at singing. You can listen to that song and you listen to it a couple times and you'll remember this. It's just a thing you'll have to learn, but it's pretty fun to learn actually when you hear the song. So you're probably seeing A, B, and C in this formula, right? And you're getting all messed up. But just remember that we know once again that um, it's going to be ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, right? We already know this from our last video, right? A, B, and C. Those are the variable constants. I would say actually constants that we're putting in from this equation. We're putting it over here. So now let's apply this. So I'm given this formula right here. I want to figure out how do I find x, right? I want to find x in this quadratic function. So since we could factor, I guess, but it'd be easier to do that, just plug all this stuff into the formula, right? So if we know that a is equal to 2, I'm just going to break this down. B is equal to negative 3, and c is equal to negative 5, right? So 2, negative 3, negative 5, right? So I'm going to plug the stuff in. So we know x is equal to negative b, right? Negative 3 is just equal to positive 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 3 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 5, all over 2 times a, which is 2, right? So now from there, we just have to simplify everything we just put into that formula, and then we get our answer. So we get 3 plus or minus the square root of negative 3 squared is 9, minus 4 times 8, which is negative 8. No, sorry, minus 4 times 2, which is negative 8, times negative 5, which is positive 40, all over 2 times 2, which is 4, right? So from there, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to simplify that again, which is 3 plus or minus radical 9 plus, or square root of 9 plus 40, which is square root of 49, which is simplifying to 7, right? So it's going to simplify to 7 over 4. Good. So now, if you were confused what a plus or minus sign is, because I keep saying that over and over, it just means you're going to do two separate operations. You're going to do one where you're solving with we're going to pretend that you're only seeing a plus sign here, and you're going to do another where you're only pretending to see a negative sign there. So we'll do that. Okay, so we'll start off here with a positive one with the plus sign. So we'll do 3 plus 7 over 4, which is 10 over 4, which is going to simplify to 5 over 2. And then we're also going to do the negative one, which is 3 minus 7 over 4, which is negative 1. So these are our two answers, right? Both of these are equal to x. And there we go. We've just solved this. All right, so now I want you to try this out on your own. Feel free to go back and rewind because I know this is a lot of stuff, and this is just like a brief intro video. But look at this stuff. Look at the quadratic formula. I'll highlight it right here, and then of course remember your factoring from the last video, and come back. You could use either method. I don't care what method you use this for, but try to figure these out. And I will come back when you're ready, and we'll be good to go. All right, so I hope you finished. I hope you did well. Let's see how you did. So let's start off with this problem right here. 2x squared plus 3x minus 20. We want to solve for x. So for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to first, let's see, we could factor, yeah, or we could just do the quadratic formula. I think I'm going to do the quadratic formula because it may be a bit easier than factoring. So I'm going to write this out again because you probably forgot it already. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Good. So this means that x is going to, and I'm going to write down what a, b, and c are equal to. So we know a is 2, right? This thing. B is 3. And then we know that c is negative 20. Good. So now from there, what we're going to do is we're going to just plug everything into that formula I gave you right there. So it's going to be x is equal to negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared, which is 9, minus 4 times 2 times negative 20, all over 2 times 2. Good. Now it's simplified to negative 3 plus or minus. I'll just do this with my calculator, so you don't have to watch me do math you know how to do. Which would be radical or square root of 169, which we know would simplify to 13, all over 4. And we know that we have the plus, because we have the plus or minus, we'd do two operations, one with a plus sign and one with a minus sign. So it'd be negative 3 plus 13 over 4, which is equal to 10 over 4, which is equal to 5 over 2. And then we'll do another one with a minus sign, which is negative 3 minus 13 over 4, which is negative 16 over 4, which is equal to negative 4. So we figured out this one. If you factored, you may have made a mistake somewhere along the line. That's why I prefer to use the quadratic formula usually, because it's just a lot safer off the bat. Let's go to the next problem. So we have n squared plus 3n minus 12 is equal to 6. Let's see. So I'm going to first, because I have to notice how in this one, 0 is already over here. So I didn't have to worry about taking that step. But in this one, they put a 6 over here. So I need to make sure that this is equal to 0 on this side. So we're going to change this to become n squared plus 3n, and I'll subtract the 6 from both sides, right? So it becomes negative 18. That's equal to 0. So off the bat, I could see that this would probably be an easy one to factor, right? So I think I could do, if the product of AC is negative 18 and the sum is 3, what if I did n plus 6 and n minus 3? Right, because the product, 6 times negative 3 would get me to negative 18, and they would add up to positive 3, right? It works. So let's go from there. So from there, we would make two equations. N plus 6 is equal to 0, and n minus 3 is equal to 0, right? So then we'd make this into n is equal to negative 6, and n is equal to positive 3. And there we go. Those are our answers for that one. Now let's do this last one. All right, so same thing as the last one. They didn't put a 0 over here, so we need to subtract the 5 on both sides. So now we're going to get 2x squared minus 3x minus 20 is equal to 0. So from there, we're going to do, let's try the quadratic formula, because I think that one's going to be, it's going to be a bit easier to do quadratic formula. Notice how over here it was very, very easy to tell that there was a factor for those. But this one's not as easy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this with the quadratic formula. So off the bat, we know that a is equal to 2, b is equal to negative 3, and c is equal to negative 20, right? So then we can go, and I'll write down my formula again. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root, here we go, of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Good. So then I'll just plug in my values. So it becomes negative 3, which is just positive 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Negative 3 squared is 9. Oh, hang on. Sorry about that. 9 minus 4 times 2 times negative 20, all over 2 of 2. So now I'm going to simplify this. It becomes 3 plus or minus the square root, and I'll just put this in my calculator. Square root of 169 over 4. I feel like we did this one because we had a very similar one just now. Yeah, I think it's the same one actually. Very, yeah. It's funny because actually this one right here is the kind of simplified to the same thing, right? Over here. So that's why it's the same thing for the most part. Interesting. Okay. Um, they're very similar. Okay. So anyway, back to this one. So it becomes 3 plus 13 over 4 and 3 minus 13 over 4. So this becomes 16 over 4, which is 4. And then this one becomes negative 10 over 4, which is negative 5 over 2. And that is our answer. So this was this one was very similar to this one, but there were different signs for the 3 right here and the negative 3 right here. So that's why it came out to be slightly different. But there you go. So as always, make sure to leave any comments in the comment section if you have any questions about this. I'm gonna probably make a couple more videos on Algebra 1, and that should be wrapping up with that. I may start to do a geometry section if you guys like it. But I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.